told people this before. Fair is something you tell your kids when they're little. You tell your kids about fair, and then you immediately regret it because your little kids start telling you what everything is unfair. All of a sudden, everything in their world becomes unfair, and they tell you, that's not fair, they stop their feet, you know the deal. So you don't do that with your second kid. You might do that with your first kid, or with your second one, you go, I'm not making that mistake again, because I had to live with that's unfair stuff forever. So you don't do that as much. But the way they use fair, very specific way. Fair in the Progressive Dictionary means what I say to you is fair. It's fair. Not what you think is fair, it's what I think is fair. When they use the word justice, justice in Progressive English does not mean what we think. We think it's justice like biblical, like the people who sin get what they deserve. That's justice. You know, they use fair and justice. It's odd that they use the word fair and they use justice. They would say fairness and justice. I think on the stone it says fair and justice. I believe that's right. Go look at that. I think it's principle number 5. But these are the principles that we are going to be ruled on. We're going to be ruled by, excuse me. We will be ruled by these principles. They said it out there in 1979. Full view. Everything these people have been doing since 1928. Because that's when they adopted their plan. 1928. Ever since. They've always operated in public. They've always told us what they were doing. They've always told us what they were going to do to us. And they banked on one thing. If we operated in the public, then we could always say, this was not a secret. Every step of the way, you said it was okay. Every step of the way. The people said, that sounds cool to me, let's do it. So we bought in. We bought in this whole time. Everything that you see going on today, especially in Washington, but also around the world, are things that are the result of things that everybody in the world bought into little by little by little since 1928. It was a masterful plan. It was a masterful plan. And, these people called themselves progressives, and they kind of hid out among us. We thought they were a thing called liberals. We thought they were liberals. And there's such a thing as liberals, but progressives let themselves be called liberals, let other people call them liberals, and they didn't refer to themselves in public as progressives except on really rare occasions. I was sitting watching, you know who Mayor Bill de Blasio is? Everybody?
I know.
Okay. Mayor Bill de Blasio is the 6'9" giant communist that runs New York City. He's his honor the mayor. And I'm telling you, he's a communist. He's always been a communist. And I looked up his history from way back. His real name is not Bill de Blasio. I think it's something. His last name is actually Wilhelm. But he adopted Bill de Blasio for some reason. But Bill de Blasio, when he was being sworn in, I was watching it. I wanted to see what he was going to say. 3 times during that speech, he declared himself to be a progressive. First time I ever heard a politician stand up in front of a crowd and say, I am a progressive. You know what? Nobody knew what he's talking about. Progressive is a good sounding word. It always has been. That's how they've always used it. Progressivism is a good thing because it means good things for all you people. We give you things. We give you things. They never talk about when they give you something, they take something from you. Nothing in life is free. Nothing in life is free. There's an axiom of your life, you got to understand that. There's no such thing as a free lunch. You know? So when people offer you something for free, you gotta reject that hand. Don't give me that free thing because you're going to take something from me. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is until it's too late. My friends, it's too late. It is too late. It is too late. Now we are in a situation here. I'm just going to go ahead and take. I'll get to my diagram. You guys stay with me for a minute. I hope I got your attention. Because when I say it's too late, I mean we're talking end time stuff here. We're talking the end times.
Yes.
Okay. Now there is a chance. I mean, you pray for God's miracles. I tell you what, to get these people off our back and to save this country, not to save this country, to save the world. This is the world we're talking about. doesn't come down and people don't gather around and bind each other and pray, I'm telling you, those other people are behind the curtains. They're like the wizard in the Wizard of Oz. They're behind the curtains. We don't see their faces. We see what they do, but we don't see their faces. Meanwhile, they're plotting our destruction. They are plotting our destruction, and they have been for many, many years. They come forward now. They come forward. I saw them in June. World Economic Forum. Write that down. Research that group. World Economic Forum. Let's go listen about it. World Economic Forum. Hiding under the radar. I went looking, when I wrote my first book, I went looking because I wanted to describe what I call the government of the future. Because the government of the future, the structure of the government of the future exists already. It's existed for years. Over in Europe, they got the World Court, they got the World Bank, they got the World this, World that, the World everything. And some of those entities have been in operation for 40, 50 years. Some of them haven't done a darn thing in 40, 50 years, but somebody is paying them to maintain that structure for future use. Because we're going to be handed over. This is their plan, their plan. We're going to be handed over to that world entity. This is the New World Order stuff that we heard about. I think everybody of any age has heard about the New World Order. I heard about it. I mean, I'll be 70 in March. I heard about the New World Order growing up. Thought it was a myth. Thought it was a conspiracy theory. Until one night, I was at work. I was in my hometown. I lived in my hometown for 3 years after I got out of the Navy. I was working with a guy, very unusual guy, especially for factory work. We were working night shifts, 12-hour night shifts. My working partner was a Jewish guy raised in Brooklyn. And he'd go into the Air Force, and he was in the Air Force almost the same span of time I was. He was in 7 years, I was in 7 years in the Navy. I did submarines. He did maintenance on electronic systems on the SR-71 spy plane. Right? So he had a lot of technical experience. I really respected that guy. But for some reason, this Jewish kid from New York married a Baptist girl, moved to my hometown, became a factory worker. Everything his mama didn't want him to be. She wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, or Indian chief. She wanted to be anything but a guy who got his hands greasy every night. That man worked next to me every night. We got our hands really greasy. He was an excellent maintainer. He and I were a force to be reckoned with. So one night we're standing there, it's like 100 degrees, we're standing in front of the fans. The production line was shut down because we had all the machines peaked and tweaked, and we had put out, we're making aluminum cans. We put out so many cans, we choked the line, and it goes to shut down. We were shut down for 2 hours, so the rest of the plane was catching up. So while we're just standing there, he turns to me and he says, "Steve, what do you know about the New World Order?" I said, "Eric, I don't know a darn thing about the New World Order. I've heard about it. Heard about it for years, but I don't know anything about it." He said, "Well, do you think it's real?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I don't know if it is it?" He said, "Yeah, it's real." He said, "When I was growing up in New York, I used to see those guys." He said, "You know anything about the Trans-Pacific?" The Trilateral Commission. Trilateral Commission, yes. I said, "No, not really." I said, "I know the Rockefellers were involved in that." I said, "At least David Rockefeller is." He said, "David, he's got one other brother." Two of them, two Rockefellers in that group. He says, "What do you know about the Council on Foreign Relations?" I said, "Well, I know they're a big dog organization." I said, "But I don't really know what they do." He said, "Well, the Council on Foreign Relations is the center of it all." He said, "The most powerful New World Order organization that exists." He says, "They spend all their time trying to sell us down the road. They spend all their time trying to hand America over." He said, "So you need to do some study." So I promised him I would. I said, "Okay, Eric, I'll do that." Well, I did. 35 years later. 35 years later. I wish to God I had paid attention to him and started doing that research in 1979, 1980, whenever he told me that. I wish I'd done it then, but I didn't do it. I got busy doing like people do. You get busy with your life, you take your eye off the ball. You know it's there. You know it's there, but you took your eye off. You know, I seen it anymore. Took my eye off for 35 years. Then one day I woke up. One day I woke up. I saw something on the news. It bothered me. Something on the news really bothered me. Maybe I should say it different. There was something that was not on the news that bothered me. There was a story that they were following. been following for like a week, maybe 10 days. Some story, not a big story, very interesting, odd, very odd story. Then one day, they quit talking about it. They just quit talking about it. And I noticed it. It's like I was waiting that night for them to give me what I needed to know. I want to know why. I want to know who. I want to know what. They just quit talking about it. Never talk about it again. And it was so obvious to me. And I said, that does it. I think I know the game. This is the game. This will work. This is the game. What I'm doing? Left hand. Left hand. Shiny object. Watch my left hand, watch the shiny object. What's my right hand doing? You don't know because you're looking at the left hand. You got no idea what that right hand is doing. That right hand has a knife in your back, and it's just about to twist it, and you're all about to die. That's the truth. That's the truth. That's how they've always operated. We've always watched the left hand with the shiny toy. And we fixate on that. And that's not what the truth is. That's where the lie is. That's what they want you to focus on. Always keep your eye on the ball. Okay? Well, the ball is in the other hand. You know? And I woke up that day and I realized I've been looking at the wrong hand. You know, there was a story there that they dropped like a hot potato, and they dropped it for a reason. I went online. One thing I'm very good at is data mining. I said, I'm going to find what the heck they were trying to hide from me. And I did. I did. The next week, I started working on my first book. I said, I'm tired of this. I'm just tired. I want to do something to make a difference. Well, it turns out, I think I was 35 years too late. I'll tell you why. Nobody reads. Nobody reads. There's some statistics that bear this out. One of them is high school graduates, once they get out of high school, 80% of them never read another book. They only read what they were forced to in high school. They don't go to college. They never read another book in their life. They never read another book. College graduates, you think, well, college graduates, you know, they do that. They get that habit. They read books. College graduates. College graduates. I think the number is somewhere around 45%. I may be a little off on that. Memory serves me. It's like 45% college graduates never read another book. Can you believe that? So people who sell books to a very small community. Very small community of people who are even willing to read. Now, if you're like me and you're not known, I can tell you what, you don't sell books. I mean, you create them, you publish them out of your own pocket, and then they sit in your bedroom for years, and you just hope, you know, because unless you've got the money to run around on your part-time and market, and you push a book here and push a book there, push a book there, you know, guess what? You're selling the books. The other thing about that is, no matter how many you sell, it's how many are read. How many are read? A book that's not read is a waste of time. It's a waste of time. You're wasting your time because nobody cares. America, and maybe the world, is conditioned not to care. Anytime you get tired of what you stop, you just tell me. You stop me. Right? America has been conditioned not to care. Yeah, they're conditioning the young people not to even care about learning. We put our little kids in school, public schools, and what do? They teach them that the whole history of America is dominated by a whole bunch of white European people who are nothing but mass killers. So all we did was kill. We killed our way around the world. Everywhere we touched, all we do is kill people. We try to exterminate the Indians. Now, there's truth to that. I tell you, there's truth to that. But there's the other side of it. It's what we teach our kids. We teach our kids that America is bad. We teach them a lot of other stuff too. They teach them that there's all kinds of families. You know, there's all kinds of families out there, and you shouldn't discriminate because that's discrimination. You know, if you got two guys out there living together and they adopt a couple of kids, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Why are you worried about that? That's none of your business. None of your business. Okay? They teach the kids that. They start in the first grade teaching the kids about sexuality, altered, deviant, what we call it, deviant sexuality. It's okay. The kids are taught that's okay. They're taught that anything is okay. The problem is that their parents are narrow-minded and they're bigoted. parents. Your parents are who you gotta watch out for, because they're gonna poison your mind, and you're gonna learn to hate from your parents.
Yes.
We here in the school system, what the teachers are teaching, we here in the school system are going to relieve you of all that. We're going to take that off of you. All you got to do is pay attention, take the test, pass the test, and later on. So all the young people coming out of school, anything goes. Anything goes. There's no such thing as sin. That's just a myth. There's no such thing as God. That's a myth.
Yes.
Jesus might have existed as a historical figure, but he sure was not. He sure was not the Son of God. He was just a guy. He's just a guy with a delusion. That's what they teach them. That's taught in the school. Now, I can tell you where to find what they teach. Because I found out. Someone opened my eyes 2 years ago. Next month, I was up in Montgomery on the State House steps. There was a guy speaking. I do this every year. I'm going to probably go up there this year too. This guy speaking. He's a retired Air Force colonel, jet pilot, fighter pilot. He teaches school in Huntsville. He starts talking about what goes on in school. He says, people who've got no idea what they're doing for your kids. He said, I'm one voice. He said, I'm kind of a nobody in Huntsville. He said, everybody knows me. He said, but I'm a nobody. I'm one voice in a wilderness full of people who don't care, who don't pay attention, who don't care, who don't raise an objection, and when you do, they tell you to sit down and shut up. He says, but I have to teach. I'm a teacher. He says, I have to teach to the standards. And he started talking about the standards. Now, I was aware of Common Core, and I thought that was a big bug that I didn't worry about. Turns out, no. What's Common Core? Remember this? Remember this? This is what Common Core is. This is what Common Core is. I try to tell my Tea Party people this. I said, you spend all your time and energy fighting Common Core without understanding it's nothing more than a shiny ball in the left hand. Nothing more than a toy meant to divert you from all the other standards. I said, as bad as you think that is, the others are far worse. The history standard is worse. They have a sexuality standard they start teaching in kindergarten. That's when they start teaching you all the meanings. Okay. Okay? This just goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. Then they got a thing they call the National School Counselors Standard. Okay, all the school counselors are all trained the same way. Every kid, every year, has to go in and visit with the school counselor. And the school counselor has a set of questions that are geared to their grade that they ask them, and they start asking questions about the parents. They ask questions about their parents. They ask questions about how much money do your parents make. If they know, they'll go home and ask Daddy, how much do you make? They didn't know why you might, my father would never tell me what he made. I knew what he made because I worked with him. I worked with him for 5 years, right next to him, so I knew what he made. But most people don't tell their kids what they made. But some people, if they get asked, they'll tell them. They go home, they go to school the next day, they go to the counselor's office because they've been told to, and they tell the counselor how much Daddy makes. They want to know what kind of car you drive.
Yeah.
They want to know how old it is. They want to know if it's financed. They ask the kids that. So what the data goes into is a thing called a student longitudinal database. Student longitudinal database. People have this myth that they carry around with them. They have wrong. I'm here to dispel that myth. If you think there's such a thing as privacy in this world now, you're living in the past. I'm talking about not even in the recent past. You haven't had any privacy for a long time. Long time. Okay, so where did the student longitudinal database come from? It came from what was known as the ARRA in 2010. President Obama signed the ARRA in 2010, the American Reinvestment and Readjustment Act. American Reinvestment and Readjustment Act. It was said that was to help get us out of our economic decline that George W. Bush put us in. Okay, so that was what, $800 million, which we thought this is a monstrous bill. It's monstrous. Well, it was a monster. It wasn't just monstrous, it was a monster. So I looked through that, because that's some of the stuff I do. I want to know how people actually break up the law, see what the law says. I found a couple of curious things in there. One was $5 billion. $5 billion a lot of money. I started reading, what's this $5 billion for? And the student longitudinal database. $5 billion to set it up. And it described what it was. It's a database to capture data over a span of time. They're talking about pre-K, all the way to, it won't be on 12, it actually went to college. So if you go to college, you're still getting in the database. And I look up, I waited a year, because I figured it's going to take them a year to start getting that thing together. The money's there, but the tasking started. Once the money got real, they started working on it. Nobody moved without money. So I gave them a year, then I went and I looked. I wanted to see what the student longitudinal database was. I found it. It was an Excel spreadsheet, 1,300 data fields. So each person in school, starting from the time they're 5 years old, they start building a database. By the time they get out of school, all 1,300 of them fields are filled. And that student counselor's job is to fill that database. Teachers do too. Every day, the teacher logs into a computer somewhere in that school and puts data in there. And that data is about your attitude, your kids' attitude. They grade on their attitude. You've got a bad attitude, they note that.
That's what they do.
Okay? Now, there's a purpose in all this. And the purpose has to do with channeling. They call it channeling. By the time the child's in the 8th grade, you start doing aptitude tests. When I was in school, we took aptitude tests. Now, our school counselors then said, well, you look like you're good at mechanics. Do you want to go to a trade school? Do you want to go to the military? Or do you want to, what do you want to do? Just tell them what you're thinking of doing. And sometimes they say, well, you got an aptitude for this, but you want to do that. Well, your aptitude is over here, but if you want to do that, go ahead and do that. They didn't channel. Today they channel. Today they look at those test scores and they decide what you're going to do next. What kind of coursework, like when you're a junior in high school, they tell you what your courses are going to be. They predispose you to certain career fields. You're going to be an academic person, you're going to be an artist type person, music, whatever. You're going to be a mathematician, a scientist. So they channel you into these fields, and once you're in this field, you're locked in, you can't get out. You know who used to do that? That's exactly how the Soviet Union did.
Yeah.
Exactly how all the communist countries did. The kids had no freedom of education. They did what they were told, and the state, the big state, tested them, decided what they were going to be. What the state decided they were going to be, that's what they were. They couldn't get out of that channel once they were in it. That's what's coming to us. That's what they've been planning for a long time. Okay? The other $5 billion I saw. $5 billion. And when I read it, I said, this game is over. People think they have things like attorney-client privilege. When you talk to your lawyer, you can tell your lawyer stuff, and your lawyer can't tell anybody. By their code of ethics, they're not supposed to divulge conversations with their clients. They're supposed to protect them. And your doctor is supposed to do the same thing. Everybody knows that, right? Your doctor is not supposed to say anything about what you two discuss or what you find with your condition. That $5 billion said to establish a nationwide network, a database of all medical records of every person in the United States. So, not long after, I visited my doctor, and he come dragging this card with a computer on it. And he ran the offices in Pasco Room. He just moved his offices, and he drags this computer in, sits down. I'm on first name basis with my doctor. So I said, Richard, got any idea what that computer's all about? He said, no, I just know that the federal government now says that we have to have them, and they gave us money to buy them, and they said now we got to convert all the records to digital form, but I don't really know why. I said, well, you're talking to the guy who can tell you why you're doing it. He goes, well, it has something to do with Obamacare, doesn't it? I said, no, it has nothing to do with Obamacare. I said, they might want you to think that. It has nothing to do with Obamacare. Obamacare is about giving you crappy care and setting up death counts and killing old people because it's too expensive to treat them. That's what Obamacare is about. I said, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the way they're stealing everyone's privacy. And he said, yeah, but we're not network. I said, you're not what? He said, we're not network. He said, this is just, we got a server back there. We're not plugged in. I said, yet. I said, you're only Someday they're gonna come in, they're gonna tell you to plug in, they're gonna pay for the link you to the outside world, and you will plug in, or you will not practice medicine. Years later, he's plugged in.
Yeah.
He's plugged in, he's fully networked. Okay, so this thing, it's like peeling an onion. Every layer leads to another layer. Okay, well, the next layer is a thing called the Federal Data Hub. It was in the ARRA 2010, $5 billion more. I started reading that. It starts talking about, see, this is the way things happen. They talk about a real problem, and then they pose the solution for that real problem. Sounds logical. Nobody thinks. What does this mean in the big picture? What's it mean in the big picture? I read the legislation. 10 minutes ago, sir. I don't want to hold you, but you want to wrap up? No, I'm serious. You want me to go ahead and do my thing so you.
Oh, you done with me?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
I mean,
oh,
no.
yeah, go ahead.
You know, I get long-winded, and I don't mean to rob your time, anybody's time. So if you've got something to do, feel free to get up and bug me. And if you want to talk to me later, Mrs. Stewart knows how to get a hold of me, and I'll talk to you all day and all night. I talked to a friend of mine for 6 hours last night on the phone, and got 2 hours of sleep, and here I am. Okay. So that same thing was in the ARA, and it was called the Federal Data Hub Project. The problem they said they were solving is the fact that we have, who knows, no one can count the number of federal agencies we got. No one knows how many, the government doesn't know how many federal agencies. All they know is how many people they pay. You know how many people on the payroll? It's somewhere close to $1 million right now. Somewhere close to $1 million. You know, a few years ago, last time I checked, it was 800,000 going north. Everybody who gets into office says, we're going to cut the federal workforce, it's too big, we're going to do that. But the deep state won't let them. The deep state never lets them cut, always tends to grow. And what's really kind of interesting is Bill Clinton was the last one who actually successfully drew the government down. Who knows why? Of all people to grow the government down, was Bill Clinton. Everybody else said they were or didn't. He didn't say he was going to, and he did. So who knows why? I guess you got a pain of conscience until his wife got hold of him and slapped that out of him. So it's right there in the legislation talking about the data hub. So what the hub was, the problem was that we had all these little systems, we had all these little agencies, they all had their own systems, some of them were hooked together, some of them weren't. But a lot of people weren't talking to each other. They said, we set up this, what's called a federal data hub, and all these little small subsystems can plug into that. And then what it does is it makes, and these things are cross-connected. So you got 5 data hubs across the country, one's in San Francisco, one's in Los Angeles, one's in Washington, one's in New York, I think one's in Atlanta. That you said? Okay, they're all connected with big fiber bundles. So the data rate, the data speed, the amount of data they can move across that is just, it's just amazing how much data they can move across that. So once I read that and I understood what they were doing, I realized somebody in Washington, somebody anywhere in the country who's got the right bag, I don't have my bag, I don't have a bag anymore. I'm just proud, I'm retired. I was going to show you my badge, I don't have a badge. There's people that have the right badges, plug into the right computers, and they have the right access levels that they can access any record in the country. Any record in the country. Now when you say, not any record, how can they access my driver's record? It's because of another law. The thing has another thing, everything has another thing. The other thing is a law that requires all data projects that are created after a certain date are supposed to be written in transportable code and able to transport across the federal data hub. What does that mean? So that means that at a certain date, it doesn't matter what software is created in this country, it's got to be able to go across that federal data hub and be readable and interpretable by any computer the government owns. So that means that if I have the right badge,